and just... No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is a special edition of Outspoken Live. Breaking right now, Axel Rudakubana is a murderer and terrorist sympathiser. He pleaded guilty in a courtroom bombshell this morning. Now, you see how this works, don't you? Schedule the most important trial in modern British history on the day of the second inauguration of Donald Trump, on the day that the MSM's attention is focused laser sharp on Washington, D.C. You then announce news like this, and all of a sudden, in just a few hours, everyone's head is going to be turned. But not me, not here on Outspoken, because there are major developments on this. So today we are going to be joined live by Charlie Bentley Astor, who was following this bombshell news in court, and Raymond Connolly. He is the Conservative councillor and the husband of Lucy Connolly, who is currently behind bars as a result of her posts on social media on the day of the Southport Massacre. But you will remember that Nigel Farage described what's been going on with the Southport Massacre as the biggest cover-up in modern history. You will know that I have tried to say as much as I could about this case without being in contempt of court. And you will see that even the Attorney General had issued warnings encouraging no one to speculate on the case. However, now that there is a guilty plea from Axel Rudakubana, news is emerging about the fact, and this will shock you and this will horrify you, about the fact that the authorities knew that Axel Rudakubana was a serious threat with terrorist motivations in the days, the weeks, the months before he stabbed those three beautiful young girls at a Taylor Swift dance class. The Guardian has been the first to break the news that I have known for some time. Axel Rudakubana was referred to counter-extremism scheme Prevent 3 times. I'm going to take you through this article now. The teenager who murdered 3 young girls at a dance class in Southport was referred 3 times to Prevent, the government scheme to stop terrorist violence, The Guardian has learned. One of the referrals followed concerns about Axel Rudakubana's potential interest in the killing of children in a school massacre, it is understood. His behaviour, including his apparent interest in violence, was assessed by Prevent as potentially concerning. But he was deemed not to be motivated by a terrorist ideology or pose a terrorist danger, and was therefore not considered suitable for the counter-radicalisation scheme. This is a scheme which I have been saying for years is not fit for purpose. Rudakubana, remember he was just 17 at the time of the Southport attack, was first referred to Prevent in 2019 when he was 13. A further 2 referrals were made in 2021, all when he was a schoolchild living in Lancashire. Now, in the weeks after the Southport Massacre, I was provided communication between Axel Rudakubana and some of his former students. It was very obvious to me that this was a scumbag completely motivated by a terrorist ideology. He was not the sweet young choir boy the mainstream media have tried to be painting him to be. And these referrals to Prevent clearly prove that. The Guardian goes on. After one of the referrals, it was recommended that Rudakubana be referred to other services. It is not known if that happened. Police say that despite extensive searches and investigations, there is no evidence of a terrorist motivation for the Southport attack. However, multiple sources confirmed Rudakubana's referral to Prevent to The Guardian. After the stabbings and his subsequent arrest, an emergency review of how Prevent dealt with Rudakubana was ordered. It concluded that the Prevent policies at the time, covering the criteria needed to accept someone on the scheme for de-radicalisation work, were correctly followed. Now just think about that for 1 minute. This is a young man who then went on to kill 3 beautiful young girls, attempted to kill many more. Some people say he was attempting to behead many more at that dance class. And yet this government review, which has taken place behind closed doors, without any of us knowing, because of the way that our contempt of court laws work, which I think need to have a really good look at, because it means Starmer has been able to get away with all of this without actually telling the public what has been happening. The Guardian has more details about the referrals which will make you sick. They report, Rudakubana was first referred to Prevent over concerns he was looking at material about school massacres in the US and a fascination with violence. He used computers at the school he attended at the time to search for material on school massacres, it is understood. By early 2020, after the first referral the previous year, it was assessed that he did not fit the criteria for the voluntary scheme but should be referred to other services. 2 years later, in 2021, he was referred again to Prevent after viewing material on Libya and past terrorist attacks, including those on London in 2017. The material is understood to have consisted of news articles, and at the time he was assessed by Prevent, officials did not have any information that he was viewing or searching for extremist material. On each occasion, it was decided that while the behaviour might be concerning, it did not meet the threshold for intervention by Prevent. He was judged 3 times not to pose a terrorism risk and was thus outside the scope of the scheme. But sources say there remains a grey area in cases where it is feared that a young person may pose a risk of violence, but where there is no sign of a terrorist ideology motivating them. Prevent exists solely to stem the flow of recruits for terrorism, and there is no similar scheme for those thought to pose a risk of violence where terrorism is not suspected. A source said there is a gap for those who are volatile, who need management, who may be dangerous. There is nothing for them. But let me repeat. I believe Axel Rudakubana is a terrorist. He had an Al-Qaeda training manual in his home. He was producing ricin. How can you say that does not make him a terrorist? I am absolutely sickened by this. And those 3 young girls lost their lives because of a lack of action. And what I am expecting to hear over the next few days, few weeks, and I hope few months, because this story will not go away for Starmer and Cooper, is the testimony of the folk who did refer Axel Rudakubana to Prevent, who were desperately asking for help and were ignored by the authorities. Now, because of how this has all emerged in court today, and we'll be hearing from Charlie very shortly about what exactly went down, of course, there's been very little detail given about Rudakubana's crimes. We only received a very short statement from the CPS immediately after the guilty plea. Let's take a look at this now.
Axel Rudakubana has today pleaded guilty to the murder of Elsie Dot Stancoom, B.B. King and Alice De Silva Aguirre, as well as the attempted murder of 10 others, including Leanne Lucas and John Hayes. This was an unspeakable attack, one which has left an enduring mark on our community and the nation for its savagery and senselessness. At the start of the school holidays, a day which should have been one of carefree innocence, of children enjoying a dance workshop and making friendship bracelets, became a scene of the darkest horror as Axel Rudakubana carried out his meticulously planned rampage. It is clear that this was a young man with a sickening and sustained interest in death and violence. He has shown no signs of remorse. The prosecution was determined to prove his guilt, and I am deeply grateful that today's plea has spared the families at the heart of the case the pain of having to relive their ordeal through a trial. Today, our thoughts are with all those whose lives were altered by what happened on that day. Most of all, we think of Elsie, of Bibi, and of Alice, the three beautiful young girls whose lives were cut short, and wish strength and courage to their families who loved and cherished them. Thank you.
Charlie Bentley Astor is an independent journalist who has been covering the Axel Rudakubana case with the type of honesty and perseverance that I wish we saw from our mainstream media journalists, but we no longer do. So, Charlie, obviously there is a lot to unpick here, but can we go back to the beginning of what happened today? You were witness to these court proceedings. Please talk us through everything.
So at the plea hearing, Axel Rudakubana had a not guilty plea entered on his behalf because he remained silent when he was asked to plea. Today, everyone was expecting to turn up and a trial to be initiated, but in the opening speech, Rudakubana's plea was changed to guilty on all accounts, and that includes the murder of those three beautiful girls, the attempted murder of 8 other children, the attempted murder of 2 other adults, possessing a bladed article, the ricin production, and owning an Al-Qaeda training manual.
So guilty on all of those. Now, he wasn't even prepared, Charlie, to say his name or confirm his name, but did he have to actually utter the words guilty? What happened?
They were entered on his behalf. He did not even stand when requested, which in the least is a show of deference to the process of justice. And he wore a medical mask over his face, those blue masks that you all saw in COVID. He wore one of those when this guilty verdict was being read out. He had his head bowed so that no one in the public gallery could see him. It was just shocking. It was just shocking.
Were there any gasps or anything from the public gallery from what you're aware?
Do you know, I'm a terrible reporter. I heard myself gasp.
No, you're definitely not a terrible reporter, Charlie. You've been doing absolute God's work on this. But I think what is so appalling is that many of the families of the victims and the attempted victims themselves may well not have been in court today because, of course, this was expected to be a 4-week trial with a lot of evidence given. And actually, today was going to be much more about jury selection and, I guess, the housekeeping matters. So it's really shocking to me that there was no warning, and many of the family members may have missed out on that moment where they actually could hear Axel Rudakubana admit that he was guilty of this crime. However, Charlie, sentencing was soon set for Thursday at 11 a.m. And what are we expecting to come out there? Because presumably there will be an opportunity for witness impact statements, for example, from the family members.
Do you know, it's still not particularly clear. The proceedings wrapped up very quickly.
And there was
All that we
nothing from the
know,
prosecution today at all. No.
not at all. So all that was heard was that the defence, when asked by the judge after this guilty plea had been entered, whether he had any extra material that he wished to present to the court, he said that he had no psychiatric reports, but that he wished to submit Rudakubana's
We try and get Charlie back. What I want to do is immediately show you the way that the mainstream media are, I think, very dishonestly covering this. So, Charlie, I think we've got you back, but just let's have a watch of this.
Yeah.
I want to show you Sly News immediately leaning into the idea of conspiracy theories and disinformation as a result of this case, which to me, given the revelation that there was much the public has not been told about Axel Rudakubana, is absolutely sickening. But just have a watch of some of this coverage from Sly News, and I'll get you to respond off the back.
What did they know? Were opportunities missed to try and intervene and divert him from this path of violence? What was his interest in violence and extremism? Where did that come from? And so on. There are so many important questions we need to know about, not least because conspiracy theories have been swirling around the internet. So we need to have the facts out in the open, and we need to have the understanding of why the police didn't declare this to be a terrorist incident. That needs to be out in the open. I don't think there's any great conspiracy around that myself, but it needs to be ventilated in public. And that's why I think we need an inquiry.
Yes, Danny, will come on to the perception of who did this at the time and what that led to, even though many people jumped to completely the wrong conclusion as to who Axel Rudakubana was. But you rightly point to that terrorism assertion, because whilst he was arrested on the scene at the time and subsequently charged, it wasn't until October that police discovered ricin, which is a naturally occurring toxin in his possession, and also Al-Qaeda materials as well. That gives this whole thing a different flavour, doesn't it? Like you say, a terrorist element to this.
Well, it does, but the police...
I mean, can you believe that immediately, Charlie, they're leaning to this idea of conspiracy theories and disinformation, when actually it was very, very clear that there has been huge amounts of information regarding Axel Rudakubana's past withheld from the British public. And Starmer and Cooper can hide behind contempt of court laws all they want, but that is a fact.
Exactly. The reason there were so many quote-unquote conspiracies...
Oh, sorry, we've just lost your audio there, Charlie. Do you mind just unmuting? And can you just repeat that, Charlie, please?
Sorry,
oh, we've just lost Charlie's audio. So while we get her back, let me just remind you, if you are just tuning in, to what has happened today. In an unexpected twist, Axel Rudakubana has pleaded guilty to all the charges that he was facing, but it has emerged in the past hour officially that he had been referred to the Prevent Terrorism Scheme 3 times. Charlie Bentley Astor, who is watching proceedings in court today, joins me now. Charlie, your reaction first to the way that Sly News immediately leans into this idea of conspiracy theories and disinformation.
How dare they? The reason there are so many quote-unquote conspiracies is because that community, the people at Axel Rudakubana's old school, social workers, neighbours, family, friends, everyone has been trying to say what they can about this because of how misleading the public narrative has been about this. Now, with regards to the terrorism charges, they knew about the ricin at his house the same day. Starmer and Cooper would have been told the same day. We saw that they were at his house at 4:30 on the day of the attack. Starmer would have known by that evening, undoubtedly. I've talked to people who work in counterterrorism, there was no way they would not have been informed that this was happening. The reason it has not been declared a terror attack is because the way our laws work, unless a terror attack is declared by the attacker at the time of the attack or is committed with a bomb or a gun, it cannot be declared a terror attack unless the perpetrator declares their motive. Because Rudakubana has failed to speak, he has declared no motive, and therefore the terror attack cannot be declared. But you were right, it is a terror attack in all but legal name.
There's been some really interesting reaction to this, Charlie. Jake Berry, the former Conservative Party chairman, posted before the trial started today. The Southport attack trial starts today, and of course it's overshadowed by Trump's inauguration. This is a calculated and cynical move by the Labour government to bury bad news behind international headlines. Alison Pearson, the Daily Telegraph columnist, posted, "This evil bastard Rudakubana, who massacred 3 little girls and injured many others, suddenly pleads guilty. How convenient. The public deserves to know how he was radicalized, why he had a bioweapon in his kitchen, although not terrorist related. It stinks, doesn't it?" And the thing is, so much stinks, Charlie, around all of this. But the timing of this trial provides the mainstream media the ultimate opportunity to look away. When I was monitoring the MSM coverage this morning, which is something I'm forced to do, Sly News was not reporting on the Southport trial starting whatsoever. They were full time with their presenters in Washington, D.C. and Jerusalem. So do not tell me that this trial was not scheduled for this day on purpose. But the thing is, we're not stupid, are we? We're not going to look away. This sentencing is on Thursday. This crime touched the nation in a way that few have in our recent history. And I don't think Starmer will get away with this. I think he is trying to delay the inevitable. But in the end, this will completely and quite rightly crush his credibility.
There is no way to survive it. He will, the whole of the front bench, any of the front bench that knew about this and were complicit in the spinning of this narrative, need to go. They are not fit to lead the country if they can't be honest about a very significant change in the course of our country. That's what this attack has been.
Nigel Farage has just weighed in as well, Charlie. Let's have a look at this. Axel Rudakubana has pleaded guilty to murder and a terrorism charge. Will we ever find out the whole truth? What do you think, Charlie? I mean, part of it is starting to emerge, but I feel we won't. I don't feel hopeful. Do you?
You should, because I'm going to make sure that everything that there is to know about this case is in the public forum. What Rudakubana's background is, why he wasn't picked up by Prevent when he should have been, what was going on with social services, mental health, his school, why was the trial scheduled for today, why has it been handled this way, why did Starmer, in full knowledge of the nature of this attack, take to a national stage when the nation was in fear and grief and say that you are far right for having concerns about how this case is being handled? Everything will be on the table. So help me God.
Well, good on you. I'm about to bring you a horrifying image, Charlie. After the guilty plea, we now have access to the official mugshot of Axel Rudakubana. This is the face of evil. What do you think of it, Charlie?
I've been in contact with a lot of the families, and account that most stuck with me is one of the parents who had seen Rudakubana at the time and said that is the face that those children saw in their final moments. And it's not the face of a child as the media portrayed him. You know, we didn't get a picture of him at 16 years old, 17 years old. We got him as young as 8, 11, 14. That is the face that they saw. And it's just unforgivable. These children should not be dead. People failed, and I will not settle for platitudes of mistakes were made. We're bored of them as a nation. Mistakes were made.
I agree.
Mistakes can't lead to the deaths of children. Yeah. You know, if he had locked that door as he went in, he would have killed all 28 of them that were in there.
Absolutely. And would that have been enough for real change? People like me have been saying that Prevent is not fit for purpose for years and years. How many people is it going to take to die before there is change? But looking at this mugshot of Axel Rudakubana, you do think about that. And Charlie, I had heard reports that his intention was to behead these young girls. Do you have any information on that?
So I'm afraid to relay that, yes, the girl who died first was almost beheaded. 2 of the other girls, he got, a decent way into doing that. And I think the girl with the least number of stab wounds had 6. I don't know whether they will go into the specifics, but it was frenzied. There was no time frame in which, the longer you spent time in the room, the more injuries you had. It was whoever was nearest got it worse. It's unimaginable what the terror those girls felt. Unimaginable.
It is unimaginable, and this could have been prevented. That is the point.
And it could have been anyone's children. Yep. This is the thing. Yep. It could have been anybody's children. It could have, if any of those, I'm sure that, these parents were raking themselves over the coals over, I shouldn't have taken them there.
I know, but it was a dance class. Come on. Exactly.
I know, exactly. It could have been anyone's children and anyone's dance class. He could have chosen one down the road and it would have been another set of children. The government can't leave this as it is.
And Charlie, you're upset. I would describe myself as very angry. And there's going to be a lot of people feeling anger today. Now, of course, we know violence is never the answer. So where should people channel that anger? Should it be demanding answers of our MPs? Should it be protest? I mean, what can people do to channel this deep sense of anger, resentment that we feel about what's gone on today?
I think every town should be hosting a vigil. And putting that on social media and showing Westminster, we see you. This could have been our children. We are taking a stand now. This can't go on. The ineptitude, the platitudes of, oh, well, there weren't the resources, or they didn't show signs at the time, and people who raised concerns about immigration when this started, that this wouldn't have happened if Axel Rudakubana's parents hadn't have been given asylum to the country. That's a valid point to make. And when it comes to integration and the levels of crime among second generation immigrants, the children of immigrants is actually worse, according to, I think, a Swedish study. It needs to be addressed. We can't go on like this.
We absolutely cannot. Charlie, stay with us. But I also want to bring in now Raymond Connolly. He is the Conservative politician whose own life took a terrible twist as a result of the Southport Massacre, because his wife, Lucy Connolly, who simply posted her anger the day of the Southport Massacre, ended up in prison as a result. So, Raymond, I know there's a lot of big moments involving Lucy, and I will talk to you about that later in the show. But of course, this breaking news, Axel Rudakubana has pleaded guilty to all the charges he was facing. We have also learned that he had been referred to the Prevent program 3 times in the past. Now, your Lucy felt what happened that day so deeply, in part because of the terrible way that you both previously lost a child. What's your reaction to the shocking information which is now public?
I just listened to this now for the first time. It's just, I'm gutted for these families and these children. I just feel they're so let down. Organisations certainly need to review their criteria and Prevent one of them. But just listening to Charlie there, it's just absolutely awful. And it almost like seems my own situation with Lucy so significant compared to what these families and residents are having to go through.
No, but you do know about the loss of a child, Raymond,
Oh, yeah,
and
I
you
know.
know
You
that
don't
a
get
loss
over
of
it.
a
You just have to
child
live with it.
can, I mean, will you tell me, it changes you forever, doesn't it?
Of course, you're so very protective over your children and other children as well. Like Lucy's situation, she was obviously mortified when these children were attacked. She's been there before with the with this loss. But just to see this unfolding now is just, really gutting, and to see the picture of that guy as well, and poor children to see that person come in. That's the last thing they've seen in their life.
It's chilling. It is utterly, utterly chilling. Can I ask both of you about the likely sentence which will be handed down to Axel Rudakubana? So Charlie Bentley Astor, in court today, the judge made it clear that Rudakubana must be expecting a life sentence. However, given his age and his guilty plea, he will not receive a whole life tariff. At some point, this psychopath, evil bastard will be out on the streets. And unfortunately, Charlie, a lot of people like me look at this case and think, I'm sorry, the death penalty is the only correct sentence here. Do you have any idea of how long behind bars he will potentially receive?
None at all. This is going to be developing over the next couple of days as they look at the mental health material that the defence have submitted to the court and taking this plea into consideration. But the idea that he will ever see the light of day is abhorrent, obviously. Hopefully, the parents of these children would have, get into their old age or passed on. The idea that they'll ever have to encounter this person on the street is unforgivable. But I agree that the country needs to start taking the death penalty idea seriously, because even the fact that these parents are going to have to pay via their taxpayer money to house this monster, to feed him, to entertain him playing the Xbox. If we can't have the death penalty, then we at least need to make prisons self-sufficient so that no victim ever has to pay for their perpetrator to be incarcerated at His Majesty's pleasure.
Indeed. And Raymond Connolly, I'm sorry, we also have to change the rules that a cold-blooded murderer, in my opinion, an absolute terrorist, cannot receive a whole life tariff in the UK because they're under 21. I'm sorry, that makes no sense, Raymond. He should never be out. He should never be out.
Agree. I wouldn't want him. I wouldn't want him walking the streets anywhere else. I mean, how can you take your kids to school? I don't think he'll be coming out personally, but who knows? In 20 years' time, how people will look at things. I can only hope that he's never ever sees the light of day outside of prison.
But he will. He will. That's the disturbing thing. He absolutely will. Now, of course, there are massive political implications to all of this too. And before I come to you both on this, let me just take a look at what Darren Grimes has said about this. How could Starmer not have known during the mass uprising and online post-arrest that he dismissed as far-right thuggery? We now know that the lives of 3 innocent young girls could have been saved. 3 referrals to prevent, 3 opportunities to intervene, and still a 17-year-old with a chilling fascination for violence and school massacres was allowed to slip through the cracks. Axel Rudakubana was flagged for his obsession with mass killings, his interest in terror manuals, and even the production of ricin, but was deemed not suitable for intervention. He then went on to commit the most chilling and horrifying attack on a Taylor Swift-themed dance class, murdering 3 children and wounding 10 more. He was charged with a terror offence, pleading guilty to possessing a document called Military Studies in the Jihad Against the Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual, and also to producing the biological toxin ricin. The system failed. Prevent exists to stop violence at its roots, yet it appears utterly powerless to act when facing with individuals like this, despite glaring red flags. We need to know if political correctness played a part in these failures. If this doesn't make your blood boil, nothing will. Our institutions seem more interested in ticking boxes than protecting lives. This wasn't a failure of hindsight, it was a failure of foresight. The writing was on the wall. Where is the accountability? Where is the justice for those innocent lives? This is a scandal of epic proportions and it demands answers now. So Charlie Bentley-Astor, Raymond Connolly, Charlie, let me come first to you. What are the political repercussions of this? Is there anything Keir Starmer or Yvette Cooper can do now? Surely we first and foremost demand that they speak, publicly demand that we hear from them. I don't give a damn that it's the inauguration of Donald Trump today. That's important, but this is more important if you are living in the UK.
Do you know, I almost don't want to hear from them. As with when I saw Yvette Cooper's, statement before the trial started, I thought, no one cares what you think. No one cares what you think.
Weasel words.
Just
Utter
exactly.
weasel words.
Just get out of the way and let the grown-ups get on with dealing with this. I do not want to hear from them. They stand up in Parliament. I won't be listening. I want to hear what the parents have to say and the extended families and the community and the teachers. I want to hear them say, unvarnished, what they tried to do, what had been covered up, why the failure happened. I want civil servants to come forward and tell us just how much did the Conservative government know before this happened? How much did Keir Starmer know once this had happened? And why? What was their rationale for choosing to keep it back? But I don't want to hear it from their mouths. I want to hear it from the people involved who've suffered, because we can't trust Starmer and Cooper to say the truth. We can't.
And Charlie, I know you have been speaking to some relatives. Do you have any sense that now that Axel Rudakubana has pleaded guilty, that we might hear from family members of the three innocent young girls, or potentially those who were subjected to an attempted murder?
So I don't know about the families who suffered direct losses. I personally couldn't imagine speaking at this particular time. However, I do know that BBC Panorama have been sticking their claws in the last couple of weeks, asking through the police if anyone would have an interview with them. To what end? I'm very interested. But certainly family members who have been more indirectly affected by this, the families who have still gone through massive trauma with their children being, attempted murder. They were mutilated. When you hear the details of these injuries, they were mutilated, and there are a lot of angry parents who are very ready to speak.
Matt Goodwin has just posted on this, whatever happens re Southport and Axel Rudakubana today, the British people need to know the truth. We need to know who knew what about Rudakubana and when exactly they knew it. We cannot have information swept under the carpet. Raymond Connolly, let me come to you on the political implications of this. As a Conservative, what do you expect to happen here?
Well, look, it's just utter incompetence from start to finish, as far as I can see. And I can, I'll be interested to see what Keir Starmer and Yvette have got to say about it all. I really don't know what they're getting like.
Oh no, we've just lost Raymond. Charlie Bentley Astor, let me give the final word to you, and we'll get Raymond back. But final word to you on what is a really significant day.
I don't have words. It's been 2 hours now, 2.5 hours since that announcement of a guilty plea on all charges. I'm still shaking. I'm so angry, and the reason I'm on verge of tears is that face. This can't go on. By hook or by crook, the nation has to come together and demand better from our leaders.
Oh my goodness, it does. Well, Charlie Bentley Astor, thank you so much for the brilliant work that you have been doing on this. We will, of course, stay in touch with you and hopefully speak to you on Thursday following the sentencing, because that is going to be a very emotional day. And of course, Charlie Bentley Astor has been leading the charge on this reporting. I really recommend you subscribe to her Substack like I do. You cannot trust the mainstream media in this. You really can't. You've got to go to independent media sources, and that's what Charlie Bentley Astor is. You can find her via my Substack or via her X account. Charlie, great work today, and I know it's a difficult one, but we will speak later in the week. Raymond Connolly, stand by, because much more to discuss with you today on what is your wife Lucy Connolly's birthday. So do stand by. But first, something really important to talk to you about, actually. Scammers and spammers who are out there to ruin your life. We've all experienced more and more of those spam emails, text messages, and robo phone calls. Not only are they annoying and time-consuming to deal with, but they usually represent a gross invasion of your private information that can cause vast financial and reputational damage. And how the heck did they get your information in the first place? It's likely as a result of data brokers who know everything about you, your health information, relationship status, mortgage details, and so much more, and then sell it for a profit. These data brokers can directly or indirectly expose sensitive information to bad actors, putting you at risk of identity theft. The number of data breaches worldwide rises every year. According to the annual data breach report by the Identity Theft Resource Centre, it went up by 72% in 2023 compared to the previous year. This means you and your loved ones are also at a constantly increasing risk of data breaches as a growing list of data brokers hold your personal information. That's then being sold or published without you even knowing about it. Now, the consequence of this can be shocking. Health insurance companies could actually raise your rates based on your online activity. Huge loans have been taken under people's names without them even knowing about it. And scammers have even started to use AI to mimic the voices of friends and family to trick victims into sending them money. These imposter scams rely entirely on the voice data they can find online. While you can ask these data brokers to delete your personal information, the process takes hundreds of hours to do manually and requires repetition. The good news is that today I have a solution for you that I use and personally endorse. Go to incogni.com/outspoken and get 60% off an annual plan right now. Incogni reaches out to data brokers on your behalf, requests your personal data removal, and handles any objections from their side. And the whole process is automated, ensuring that your data stays off the market by conducting repeated removals and taking down your data again if it pops up. This is what makes the yearly subscription especially advantageous. I do the annual plan, so they're constantly taking me off these lists. It's such a simple process. You simply create an account, grant Incogni the right to work for you, and they will contact the data brokers on your behalf to request your personal data removal. Go to incogni.com/outspoken and get 60% off an annual plan right now. It could be the most important decision you make. But now, back to the show. Breaking right now, there is growing outrage that Axel Rudakubana, the Southport Massacre perpetrator, a man who is clearly evil, a man who I believe is a terrorist, a man who killed those 3 young girls at a Taylor Swift dance class, and a man who we now learn was referred to the Prevent Counter-Terrorism Organization 3 times, yet nothing was done, has pleaded guilty. But that doesn't mean the focus goes off the government. And what about those poor folk who are currently languishing behind bars in what is meant to be a free country because they happen to send a post on X or Facebook on the day of the Southport Massacre in the heat of emotion, saying something that the authorities considered unpalatable, or in the case of Lucy Connolly, who we see here, illegal. Right now, I'm joined by Raymond Connolly. He is the Conservative politician, the husband of Lucy Connolly, who remains behind bars on what is a very significant day today, Ray, because it is Lucy's birthday. And when you were last on the show, Ray, you thought Lucy might be allowed a Christmas visit. I don't believe that happened. So how was the first Christmas for you and your little girl without your mum?
Yeah, the governor refused leave, although the probation officers, they were very supportive of Lucy and felt that there was not a risk and it wasn't a problem, and that I'd pick her up at 8 o'clock in the morning and she would be back home at 5 o'clock. But they refused to come home. So on Christmas Day, Lucy rang up and I just put it on loudspeaker with so me and Edie can have a chat with her and the family. So my daughter was happy with that.
Do you think that she is going to be allowed out with an electronic tag anytime soon?
It's quite, I mean, obviously Lucy's doing a freedom of information to get information from the prison, and I was just looking, I only just got it yesterday, but obviously she was sentenced on the 17th.
Yes.
On the 18th, the information goes into the systems for home detention curfew, and on the 18th it was she'd passed automatically eligibility checks on the 18th, but on the 21st it was a manual alteration, and it was put down as presumed unsuitable offence. So, I mean, I do know the name of the person who did make that adjustment, but it was a manual change. So, although Lucy was under the impression she had to apply to the governor, and she did, with the backing of the probation officers, both of them were fully supportive of Lucy and didn't feel that she would be a risk, and she was easily manageable. It came back as it had been the governor had refused release on temporary license for the remainder of the last 6 months of her sentence. So she will have to do the full lot.
It's just crazy. Now, Raymond, you have been subjected to a bit of a witch hunt by the West Northamptonshire Council, despite the fact that you're an elected Conservative councillor. You have been reselected to fight your seat. Now, I have been told that the council has now employed an external law firm called Bevan Britton to look into these complaints, presumably at the expense of Northamptonshire ratepayers. This is insane, isn't it? This is absolutely insane.
Yeah, I thought they could have dealt with it internally, but I assume that they've had some quite big influential people write in to complain about my support for Lucy, to say that by supporting her I was undermining the police, which even was with the police situation, because I know quite a few of them. I was kind of like, oh my God. But they'd text me some of the low normal police officers, just to say, look, Ray, we've got your back. And even when I was at Tesco's the other day, I seen one of them and thought, oh my God. And he come up and like just chatting, sorry, but obviously it's obviously the senior leadership. But I guess some of these people, they're anonymous complaints. So it's just something I'll have to deal with. I have put a freedom of information in to West Northampton Council to get as much information as I can before they drop this on me and start for me to make a response to them, which I'll do the best I can. But even then, it's very difficult because obviously, you know, I'm going to support my family. I'm going to support Lucy, the mother of my child, always. But I'm mindful of, you know, I mean, I look at Keir Starmer. I mean, it weren't only a few weeks ago, he's throwing his own son under the bus to kind of dodge an issue. But that's not me. I will hopefully get to the next elections without too much trouble, and I'll let them, the electorate, the residents, decide whether they want someone like me to represent them.
Do you feel that Lucy has been at all vindicated, given the news that we now learn about Axel Rudakubana, given that it is very clear that there was an establishment cover-up about the fact that this guy had been referred 3 times to the Prevent scheme? And I mean, look at this post here on X from the past few minutes. Chris Rose looking at the 2 images and saying you've got the media image, which was there trying to present Axel Rudakubana as some type of angelic schoolboy, versus the mugshot, the real Axel Rudakubana.
Yeah, I just feel if the government were more truthful at the start, it would have calmed all fears. There probably wouldn't have been these, well, so-called these riots and whatever. I really do believe that.
Yeah, so-called riots, I call them.
Yeah. But so there's just so much false information coming from the government. But people knew that it weren't going to be a shy, quiet Welsh boy. They knew it was a terrorist attack, and today we find out they were right.
Will you be passing on the information that has emerged about Axel Rudakubana to Lucy behind bars?
Yeah, she'll ring me tonight, and I'll tell her. But she's just more gutted about the families and the children, and even I'd hate for her to be thinking about this today. It really will cause an issue with her.
I know. it's just utterly heartbreaking. And
I just like,
yeah,
awful time for these people.
of course. Well, look, do pass on my birthday wishes to Lucy. And
Thanks, Dan.
I hope you get through today, Raymond. It's a very difficult one for the entire country, but I really appreciate you being here today. That is Raymond Connolly, the husband of Lucy Connolly, Conservative Party politician, on the day where the truth about Axel Rudakubana began to emerge. And the reason we are here early today for a special live edition of Outspoken is because I refuse to play the establishment game, the game the authorities want us to play, which is look over here, forget about what's happening in the UK, forget about the truth about Axel Rudakubana, and focus entirely on the inauguration of President Trump. Now, of course, the inauguration is a very important moment for the Western world. We will be covering it live on Outspoken from 4:30. But my priority today was to come on air to report the truth about Axel Rudakubana, a man who we now know was referred 3 times to the Prevent Counterterrorism Scheme. Nothing was done, and yet he went on to murder those beautiful 3 young schoolgirls in Southport. Lots of folk think that what happened could be the end of Keir Starmer's political career, and I certainly think the trust that the public has in him is smashed, if he ever really did have it. Now, if you are watching this live broadcast now, you can keep the tab open and we will be back live at 4:30 UK time. That's 11:30 Eastern, 8:30 Pacific for coverage of Donald Trump's inauguration. I'd also recommend that you sign up to Outspoken on Substack, www.outspoken.live. We will be hosting a special royal after show following the inauguration, decoding the Vanity Fair expose into Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. But thank you so much for joining us for this very special edition of Outspoken today on the guilty plea of Axel Rudakubana, one of the most despicable homegrown terrorists the UK has ever seen. And believe me, I will be returning to this story live tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.